Good evening. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. Ahead of the June 24th snap elections, the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, is yet to announce its presidential candidate.
The Supreme Board of Elections has ruled this week that the newly formed Good Party will be allowed to run in the June 24th snap elections. In a surprise turn of events on Sunday, 15 MPs from the main opposition Republican People's Party switched to the Good Party to ensure they could run in the elections in 2 months, officials from the CHP said. Upon the instruction of our party's leader, 15 of our friends joined the Good Party as a precautionary measure to prevent problems occurring right at the beginning of the election period, CHP spokesman Bülent Tezcan announced at the press conference in the parliament on Sunday, alongside the MPs who resigned. It's a step to eliminate obstacles on our way to democracy, Tezcan said. Our friends are acting as shields against efforts to undermine democracy. They will go down in history as heroes, he added. This is not an easy task to do. It's a hard one, but these days of one-man rule are where we show our strength and ability to accomplish hard tasks. The chairwoman of the Good Party, Meral Akşener, is so far the only candidate who has publicly declared their intention to run in the June 24th presidential elections. Akşener is a popular former right-wing interior minister who founded the Good Party last year after splitting with the Nationalist Movement Party, which is now allied with Erdoğan. The main opposition CHP, meanwhile, is yet to announce their presidential candidate. Following rumors that former President Abdullah Gül could emerge as a possible contender against his once close political ally Erdoğan, CHP leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has so far remained silent, who along with Erdoğan was among the founders of the ruling AKP in 2001, has met with opposition leaders amid speculations that he could run as a presidential candidate for the main opposition alliance. Gül and Erdoğan have mostly followed the same political paths and a religiously conservative ideology. However, Gül, who served as Turkey's president from 2007 to 2014, has increasingly criticized Erdoğan's handling of the aftermath of the attempted coup in 2016. If nominated by the opposition camp, Gül is expected to announce a manifesto that promises a return to the parliamentary system by abolishing the executive presidential changes to the constitution approved by a controversial referendum last year. If they ask me to step down for Gül, I will not. I will not be the opposition's joint candidate either. Everybody should run in the elections under their own name, private broadcaster Fox TV's anchorman İsmail Küçükkaya quoted Akşener as telling him on the phone on Tuesday. The rumored presidential candidate Gül spoke to the reporters for the first time earlier today about the latest discussions around his name and said that he will hold a press conference tomorrow to address the candidacy issue. Gül held talks with the leader of the Islamist Felicity Party, Temel Karamollaoğlu, on Wednesday and met former Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu in Ankara a day earlier. Other opposition figures are also meeting to discuss alliances for the election of June 24th. Karamollaoğlu has also met CHP leader Kılıçdaroğlu and Good Party leader Akşener. On Tuesday, referring indirectly to the rumors about Gül's possible candidacy, President Erdoğan said, "There is a strange scenario before us. Let's wait until this weekend and see how it plays out." Meanwhile, CHP's parliamentary group chair Özgür Özel tweeted about the rumors on Gül's presidential candidacy and said, "Enough, we are fed up with all these speculations. The only objective here is to create debates and lower morale in the CHP. The CHP has never had Abdullah Gül's name on the table. It doesn't have it now and it won't have it in the future," Özel added.
Tonight, we're joined by Yüksel Taşkın, who is a professor of political science and also a member of the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP's Party Assembly. Welcome once again to This Week in Turkey, Mr. Taşkın. So the biggest headline this week perhaps, not perhaps, but definitely, was the rumors around former President Abdullah Gül's possible presidential candidacy, and public opinion seems to be extremely polarized on this issue. What's your take on Gül's possible candidacy?
Actually, there are two rival perspectives. The first one argues that based on certain polls, they claim, he is the only person who could have a chance to defeat President Erdoğan in the elections. And they claim that two groups could vote for Gül, certain religious-oriented Kurds, pious Kurds, and those unhappy conservatives who were so far voting for AKP. So these two groups could only vote for Gül according to this perspective. The second one argues that the second one is a bit emotional, and they are of course right, and they have some sort of resentment. They claim that this country suffered certain certain disasters, the state of emergency, purge of tens of thousands of people from the state, an incredible change in the regime. In these processes, Gül could have taken a firmer stance, they argue, and I also agree with them. So his quietism, silence, passive waiting for duty to come and be passed over him is a point that many people actually feel quite disturbed. There is also an additional element. Allegedly, there are some AKP members in the current AKP assembly group. Some people, claim that they could be between 20 and 50. We don't know, because these people are also quite cowardly and silent. And according to certain circles in the media, these people are also waiting for Gül to move so that they could also move. But this is not the type of politics that Erdoğan could not overcome. Erdoğan is always active. He is always able to defeat his passive, cowardly, calculating rivals. So if you have a point, if you have an ambition, if you have something to say, you should be able to move and take a risk. So many people are taking risks in Turkey, including me myself. That's why, personally speaking, I also feel a bit resentful, because we are experiencing fateful days, fateful years. Turkey is between a full authoritarianism and maybe a last chance for restoring democracy, and history will judge those people who remain silent in this critical juncture, I believe. That's why this, let's say, joint candidate solution couldn't be realized under these conditions. So we need to be realistic. We should, under practical conditions, we should try to seek for other alternatives, I think. And in simple terms, the remaining alternative is that all the parties should name their candidates, and these candidates should be bright, attractive. They should have maximum vote so that a second round could be possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's now get to the latest on Akşener's Good Party, which is a relatively newly formed party, and the news of 15 MPs from the CHP quitting their party to join the Good Party in order to make sure that the Good Party could run in the upcoming snap elections came as a big surprise to many from different camps. And how do you evaluate this?
We are concerned with fair elections. From the point of view of principles, we should do our best to help other democratic organizations and parties to be able to represent themselves, because we are in favor of fair elections. We also claim justice in the electoral election process. Republican People's Party has been, demanding the reduction of national threshold, sometimes 0, sometimes 3% of threshold has been defended by the Republican People's Party. So this is a move in line with our principled standing, I believe. But on the practical level of the issue, this is a potentially democratic party whose contribution to the, this new game of 50% plus one vote, their contribution is very crucial, vital. That's why we supported them so as that they could stand in the elections. So there is one, principal point from the principles ethical perspective. Second, quite practical concerns that they should also run in the elections so that we can have maximum actually capacity to defeat our rivals. It was also an indication of flexibility and being able to put a strategical mind when it is necessary. So that move has been actually supported by so many people in Turkey. I believe that we changed the agenda. We were able to set an agenda, which is good news for maybe for the immediate future. Okay.
Thank you. We'll continue with our next news video on the elections, and then we'll be back in the studio to continue our conversation with Professor Taşkın. The Supreme Board of Elections announced the calendar for the June 24th presidential and parliamentary elections yesterday.
Turkey's Supreme Board of Elections, YSK, announced the calendar for the June 24th presidential and parliamentary elections yesterday. According to the calendar, the process for the presidential election will begin on May 1st. Political parties are required to submit the names of their candidates by May 5th. The final list of eligible candidates to run for president will be published on the official Gazette on May 13th, which will also mark the beginning of the presidential election campaign period. Those who are able to collect at least 100,000 signatures may also run for the presidency, and the deadline to file such candidates is May 9th. For the parliamentary elections, the deadline to submit the list of candidates will be May 21st. Turkish citizens living abroad will be able to cast their votes between June 7th and June 9th. According to the calendar announced by the YSK, political parties that want to form an election alliance should submit their alliance protocol signed by the party leader by May 6th. The YSK has said that 11 parties will run in the parliamentary and presidential elections. These parties will be the ruling Justice and Development Party and its ally, the National Movement Party, main opposition Republican People's Party, the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, Felicity Party, Grand Unity Party, Independent Turkey Party, Democrat Party, Patriotic Party, Free Cause Party, and the newly formed Good Party. Meanwhile, after the parliament passed on a bill on April 20th calling for early elections on June 24th, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan signed a harmonization law on April 25th to bring the country's election system in line with the constitutional reforms approved last year in a referendum. As the YSK announced the elections calendar, a number of high-profile figures have resigned from public offices to run in the upcoming parliamentary election. According to the laws, those who hold public offices must resign from their posts in order to compete in the elections. The governor of the southern province of Burada, the mayor of the Black Sea province of Samsun, and the mayor of central Anatolian province of Konya, and the mayor of Istanbul's Fatih district have already announced their resignations. The deputy general manager of the state-run broadcaster TRT and the head of the Social Security institution have also resigned from their posts to run on the AKP ticket in the upcoming vote.
So, Professor Taşkın, how do you think the government, or the governing bloc rather, will manage the remaining 60 days, actually less than 60 days, until the elections?
Very clear. They will create de facto conditions. They have already created de facto conditions so that opposition forces cannot adjust themselves. For example, for the first time in the history of Turkey, general elections will be held under the state of emergency conditions across the whole Turkey. What does this mean? We know by experience that these conditions can be abused on behalf of the ruling bloc. Remember recent visit of certain people to former President Abdullah Gül for a chat. Okay, That's an example. Another point is that, for example, if you are going to run as an independent candidate for presidential elections, you have 5 days to collect 100,000 signatures. These people cannot get organized in these 5 days. Some of them may feel intimidated. So this has nothing to do with fair elections, the concept of fair elections. What does this mean? You know, they want to put us in a rush so that we can make crucial mistakes. This is not fair. This is not ethical. This is not just. And of course, we are used to this from the last referendum. It was kind of a contest between an elephant and small ants. We know this. We are we don't believe in them, actually. We should be able to organize ourselves. We should create our own power. We should convince people, ordinary people, to support us so that we can actually overcome this really, really unfair, unethical, actually, and let's say fearful, acts of Machiavellian acts under which there is essentially a fear element, I believe. So. Another point that they calculated is that opposition parties cannot form certain alliances for either presidential elections or for general elections. We will see whether they are right or not. Another tactic they use is the demonization of opposition forces. Allegedly, the Fethullahist terrorist organization is behind certain alliances. This is, you know, I don't know, nonsense. I don't know, are there people in Turkey who would buy this nonsense? You know, remember last, you know, sentences charged on the Daily Cumhuriyet journalists and executives. Simultaneously, they were accused to aid terrorist organizations such as Fethullahist terrorist organization, PKK, and another revolutionary left organization at the same time. So this is incredible. What does this mean? They will do their best to stigmatize us. They will claim that we are not national forces, we are unnational forces, so on and so forth. But I believe, I am optimistic that this kind of post-truth elements will not be able to work in these elections. You know, because people are learning very fast in Turkey, as a recent referendum displayed clearly. So we will insist to defend truth against these, you know, manipulators of post-truth. So this is going to be an election between supporters of the truth and supporters of post-truth, whose imagination and paranoid standing is stronger than their grasp of their reality. So this will be essentially similar to the competition during the referendum, an extension of that referendum. This time we will get better organized and we will do our best to win the victory.
So in these dire and unfair circumstances that you've just described in your response, what kind of a strategy do you think the opposition should follow in the first round of the presidential elections? Should there be a joint candidate, as some say, or should there be separate candidates for each party?
Practically speaking, we missed the prospect of a joint candidate for the first round. We should be realistic, as I said before. What does this mean? You know, all existing groups and parties who are able to, you know, nominate a candidate, presidential candidate, they should actually propose their candidates. What does this mean? Republican People's Party will have a candidate, and this candidate will be crucial. And we should be very careful about this. That's why we are trying to do our best. We are trying to analyze data. We are trying to listen to the people. And some other people claim that you are too slow. But, you know, when we make a mistake, many people will be unhappy. So, People's Democratic Party is going to nominate Selahattin Demirtas. I believe he's a chance of getting around 12 or 13% of the vote. He will also increase the votes of the HDP for the general elections. So he's a very dynamic leader, as you all know. Then a good party, or E party in Turkish, they will put forward Akşener. she also has a good chance of getting more votes than her party's performance in the general elections. I hope Felicity Party, Saadet Party, could also, propose a candidate by fulfilling the preconditions. And I also further hope that other groups and parties can also, bring their candidates. So, what does this mean? Tactically, from a tactical perspective, we need a diversity in the number of candidates, actually. For the general elections, I still defend zero threshold approach. This is the best solution because this will de facto eliminate the 10% unfair trap. They call it national threshold. I call it national trap to destroy national will. That's very clear. This togetherness is not an alliance, actually. There will be no ideological motivation, for example, for 7 parties to come together. I use the metaphor of a bus, and there is a bridge. We need to get into the bus to pass over the bridge. We will be same people after we pass the bridge. So this is not an ideological rapprochement. Rather, it is a mathematical necessity. So these are the arguments we also use in daily life to convince people. So this is, everybody should be realistic, especially E-Party, Good Party, should be realistic to be, courageous enough to come together with HDP in this bus. Otherwise, all Turkey may, pay the cost. What is the greatest, worst risk? Imagine that E-Party cannot pass the 10% national threshold. Imagine that at the same time, HDP cannot pass it. Only Republican People's Party can pass. So this means a huge disaster for the opposition. We should be quite smart, and everybody should be able to give concessions, because in Turkey we are not actually defending our party interests. We are trying to defend our democracy, which is our which is the ground for our existence. I hope all parties will be smart enough to realize this inevitable reality.
Mm-hmm. My final question to you would be about the zero threshold alliance that you've just described. This is a proposed alliance for the parliamentary elections, because the prior debates on alliances were mostly focused on the presidential elections. Well, getting to the zero threshold alliance now, I mean, you've explained that you use the metaphor of a bus for this alliance, and how the people riding this bus will still be the same people after they get off the bus. But still, could the pro-Kurdish HDP and the mostly nationalist Good Party coexist within this alliance? How realistic do you think is this possibility?
This is a test of democracy, actually. I always believe, and I always insist that if we were able to be Democrats, until this point, I mean all the parties, you could have no authoritarian regime, actually. So in all cases of authoritarianism, transition to democracy could be possible first by the coming, when the opposition forces can come together around their minimum expectations. When they come together, they also create a pressure, and a split occurs in the ruling bloc. That's the only way that democratization could be possible under an authoritarian regime. So here there is a simple rational choice they should make. Zero threshold would make it easier for all the parties actually to create the conditions for a more democratic Turkey. This is a win-win situation. And I also believe that our voters could really understand the meaning of this togetherness, but ruling bloc spokespeople, I mean, they will continue as if they will blame us to be pro-Kurdish, pro-whatever. Whatever we do, they will do this. We should be bold enough to defend democracy. So HDP is a party with 6 million votes. 12 members of the party are in jail. So is this the way we are going to solve Kurdish problem? No. This can divide Turkey. Imagine that you are a nationalist party. Imagine that you don't want Turkey to be divided. Are you just going to talk or act. That's a critical moment. I hope they will understand this. But if this is not going to take place, there are other alternatives. We should be very fast and very flexible, actually, to realize other alternatives. I believe that the sense of isolating the Kurds would cause presidential elections in the second round. Imagine that you are a party X, you are isolating the Kurds, you are claiming that I cannot come together with them. But can you expect these people to vote for your presidential candidate in the second round? On which ground? On which argument? This is not technically possible. So it's not just principles, but practical sense of politics too, I believe.
Thank you very much, Professor Taşkın, for your comments and for joining us in the studio tonight. We'll continue with our next news video now. A Turkish court has sentenced 13 Daily Cumhuriyet journalists to prison on terrorism charges this week. Cumhuriyet journalist Kadri Gürsel commented on the verdict for Medyascope today. Kayıtta mıyız?
Kayıttayız.
Tamam. Mr. Gürsel, how do you evaluate the verdict that's been reached as a result of the Cumhuriyet trial in terms of media freedom and the rule of law in Turkey?
Well, this is another black stain, casted on the field of media freedom in Turkey, and it's a frontal assault against what remained from independent journalism in Turkey. It's a frontal assault under the form of judicial practices. But if I have to qualify the assault, it's an assault of anti-journalism versus journalism. And the dark matter of anti-journalism spreads rapidly against independent journalism. What is left from independent journalism, indeed? So Wednesday, excuse me, the date of our sentencing was another black day for Turkey's independent journalism, because we defended only, during the trial, during the process, we only defended journalism, and we built our defenses on journalism. And these accusations are senseless, verseless, unbased, biased, farcical, and it's a nonsense. Because can you imagine a journalist is accused of deliberately and intentionally helping to many terrorist organizations at once? This is unprecedented in history. How can I help deliberately and intentionally to PKK, pro-Kurdish separatist PKK, to far left DHKPC, to Islamist FETÖ organizations, which is official designation of the Jemaat or Gülenist movement, and the proof, the so-called proofs, are only products of journalistic activities, headlines, news stories, or columns, and even tweets, sent from personal accounts. And these are all can be seen in the context of freedom of the press and freedom of expression, nothing more and nothing less. So by this verdict, the press freedom deficit of Turkey has grown unprecedentedly, dramatically, and it has already created its chilling effect, because people do call me to say we are sorry, but they should be sorry for Turkey indeed, and for themselves, not for me.
The Turkish Parliament's National Education Commission approved a bill this week to split up 10 existing universities to establish new ones.
A bill foreseeing the establishment of 15 new universities across the country has been approved by the Turkish Parliament's National Education Commission on Wednesday. The bill includes the establishment of 3 new state universities in the southeastern region of Gaziantep, the central Anatolian province of Sivas, and the Black Sea province of Samsun. The bill also proposes the establishment of two foundation universities in the western cities of Istanbul and Izmir. The government's proposal was met with confusion and concern by many, as the new universities will be created by splitting 10 existing universities. Gazi University in Ankara, Istanbul University, İnönü University in the eastern province of Malatya, Karadeniz Technical University in the Black Sea province of Trabzon, and Selçuk University in the Central Anatolian province of Konya are among the universities that are expected to be split. Following the approval of the bill, students and academics from the long-established Istanbul University gathered in the university's Beyazıt campus to protest the bill and called on Istanbul University Chancellor Mahmut Ak to resign from his position. The bill foresees the detachment of the Cerrahpaşa School of Medicine from Istanbul University's management structure to be eventually merged with Ibn Sina University. What they are doing is tearing the historical ties apart, abolishing shared values, cutting off roots. By doing this, they aim to control universities more easily. They want to manage the invaluable estates of the university through a divide and rule policy against faculties, said Turkish Medical Association's president, Professor Raşit Tükel, who is also a member of the Istanbul Faculty of Medicine.
The Turkish Central Bank raised one of its main interest rates on Wednesday for the first time this year, dismissing calls from President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan ahead of June's snap elections.
On Wednesday, the Turkish Central Bank lifted its late liquidity window rate to 13.5% from 12.75%. It left the benchmark repo rate on hold at 8%. The central bank said that it will keep monetary policy tight until the inflation outlook displays a significant improvement and also becomes consistent with its targets. The marginal funding rate has been kept at 9.25% and the borrowing rate has been kept at 7.25%. The one-week repo rate has been kept at 8%. In a statement, the central bank said the central bank will continue to use all available instruments in pursuit of the price stability objective. Tight stance in a monetary policy will be maintained decisively until inflation outlook displays a significant improvement independent of base effects and temporary factors and becomes consistent with its targets. Inflation expectations, pricing behavior, and other factors affecting inflation will be closely monitored, and if needed, further monetary tightening will be delivered. The dollar to lira rate fell from 4.117 to 4.03 after the announcement. The central bank's efforts to rein the double-digit inflation have been complicated by a sharp sell-off in the lira currency, which has hit a series of record lows this year. Investors have dumped the lira on widening concern about Erdoğan's drive for lower interest rates. The bank has used unorthodox moves to tighten policy, heightening the perception that it wants to avoid conventional rate hikes in the face of Erdoğan's often stated opposition to high borrowing costs.
Fenerbahçe Doğuş beat Spain's Baskonia and advanced to the EuroLeague Final Four this week.
The only remaining Turkish team in Turkish Airlines EuroLeague, Fenerbahçe Doğuş, beat Spain's Baskonia 92-83 yesterday and advanced to the EuroLeague Final Four for the fourth time consecutively. Reigning EuroLeague champs Fenerbahçe Doğuş backed the EuroLeague Final Four ticket yesterday in an away game, finishing out a four-game series with a 3-1 record against Baskonia. Fenerbahçe held its lead in the ends of the first, second and third quarters. Through a hard-fought fourth quarter, Fenerbahçe clinched the victory with a final score of 92-83. The victorious away match at Baskonia's home court at Fernando Buesa Arena followed a surprise 88-83 defeat on Tuesday. Under the leadership of the legendary head coach Željko Obradović, Fenerbahçe will face Lithuania's Žalgiris Kaunas in the Serbian capital of Belgrade between May 18th and 20th.
Now let's take a look at what's on in Istanbul next week.
Renaud Garcia-Fons is a French bassist and a composer known for his innovative playing and the use of a 5-string double bass. He has won numerous awards around the world throughout his career. Tomorrow he will be performing at Cemal Reşit Rey Concert Hall. Mamut Art Project, Turkey's unique art event dedicated to engaging emerging artists with new collectors, galleries and curators, returns this spring, provides an important platform for 50 up-and-coming creative talents working in a range of disciplines throughout Turkey. The 6th edition of Mamut Art Project will be held this weekend at Istanbul's Küçük Çiftlik Park. This Sunday, you can check out the city's flavors at the 101 Taste of Istanbul Festival. Will be on the offer here. This Sunday, you can check out the city's flavors at the 101 Taste of Istanbul Festival. Since 2013, the festival has been bringing Istanbul locals together with the city's best restaurants and dishes. This year, the festival returns once again to the historic waterside mansion Esma Sultan Yalısı, where you will be able to indulge in the best of Istanbul's cuisine. Every flavor that has made a home for itself in Istanbul will be on the offer here. In addition to the tasting experience, you can look forward to food and drink-related talks, workshops, events, and an after-party.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 9 p.m. Goodbye.